Hey, I'm Solomon Jaye, and welcome to Beyond Mediocre, where I get to sit and talk with creative professionals about what they are doing to push beyond mediocre. So, want to say that today we have a very stellar classical vocalist meeting up with us today via Zoom. We actually went to school together at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, and since we left school, he's been all over the place. He's premiered in London's Grimeborn Opera Festival and a production of Wagner's The Flying Dutchman in Hamburg, Germany, which is pretty freaking cool. And today we're going to get him to stretch into some jazz a little bit, but more on that in a little bit. First, we're going to get him on here. His name is Edwin Cotton. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting for the first time here on Beyond Mediocre. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and hit call on this Zoom situation, and let's go ahead and get him on.
Hey,
Hey.
man. Good to see
Long
you.
time no see.
Really long. I think it's been about 11 years.
Good Lord. Yeah, time flies.
Yeah, it does. Long time. I was telling someone about seeing you. I think last time we saw each other, we were in New York City in Central Park. Not Central Park, Washington Heights.
Yeah.
And we had a nice little step there.
In the Heights days, man. Yeah.
Wow.
Man, yeah, it's been forever. So, are you still living in New York?
I am quarantining in New York.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've been here. I mean, I've been here since the quarantine started. I literally flew back from a tour throughout the United States.
Uh-huh.
I think it was the 11th of March. And then I haven't left since. I was supposed to on the 12th fly to Germany and London, and then it was just like flight ban on the 12th. I was like, oh, okay. But it's okay. It's been quite an experience.
Yeah, man. So, very excited that you could come on and do this, and I'm excited to have to have the video of the song we just put together play at the end of this. It came out really well, and it was good to hear your voice again.
Yeah, it's been a really long time. I was just like, as soon as I heard it, and then I was like, yes, I love it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And it's been very nice because I haven't done a lot of jazz in a really long time. When I was in Germany, I was traveling with the 12 tenors, and we did a lot of crossover. In classical, we did a lot of crossover music from Michael Jackson to We Will Rock You to You Can Leave Your Hat On, which I stripped for, which was a lot of fun.
Okay.
I got a lot of fans from that, but they were a little out of my age range.
That happens.
But through them, there was a guy who was a pianist, and he really was into jazz and lots of other things. And so we would just sit down by the piano, and I would start singing My Funny Valentine and all kind of stuff. And I was just like, oh yeah, I remember, I know how to do this stuff. So it was fun. And so it was nice to kind of get back into that kind of way of singing.
Which is great, man. And it's funny how you can be out of a certain kind of a thing. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just kind of how time works. Like you can be out of a certain style of thing. And then when you go back into it, it's like, oh, wait, I feel like I got to dust off a couple of cobwebs, but I remember what this feels like. And you work your way back in.
Oh, yeah. It took me a couple tries. Well, it took me to kind of find that find that place again, find that at least how I wanted it to come out,
Yeah.
So, but after a little while, I started to feel it, and now I'm in my house, just going crazy doing jazz. I have my little microphone, and it's nice.
That's how you got to do it. That's how you got it. So thing number one, this has been an interesting question for me to ask. This is only episode, I think episode 7 or 8 that we're on now, but. It's crazy how you can know people for long periods of time. And I'm finding out little by little that for all of the people I know in the industry, all the friends and everything, I really don't know how most people got into music. I never thought to ask. And I mentioned before we got started here that we went to Morehouse together.
Oh
And
yeah.
in that time, I don't remember asking how a lot of folks got into music in the first place. I
Yeah.
know how we ended up at Morehouse. Don't know
Yeah.
how we started singing, So how
Yeah.
what is that for you?
Um, my family is from Trinidad and Tobago. I was born in New York, but my family's from Trinidad, and so I grew up with the steel pan and all the drums and all
Mm,
the stuff inside the house. Always with calypso and soca, and I was always dancing on the floats and carnival. So I knew music before I knew how to talk,
mm.
um, or how to make good sentences. But but I it was always in my blood, and so that was the beginning. But then actually discovering that I could sing and that I enjoyed singing, I think
Mm,
that really came from mimicking the radio, hearing Patti LaBelle and
mm.
Tony Braxton and Anita Baker with no words, and just always
Yes.
imitating them. And that's how I kind of started to feel it. And then I remember I had like my first performance in at the end of elementary school
Mm.
singing Count on Me with a good friend of mine. And I remember getting goosebumps and everyone's like, oh my God, this is amazing. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll continue doing this. And singing with the Boys Scout of Harlem after that, which was my high school experience,
That I
that kind of,
remember.
that solidified it. That solidified it. That actually exposed me, besides for hearing those airplane commercials with the flower duet from Lakme, hearing
Oh.
opera.
Mm.
When I got to the Voice of Harlem, that's where I started to hear classical music and actually engage it and feel like, oh wow, I can make that sound. I would go home and and just try to sound like a tenor, and eventually I did. And so through that, hearing that, and traveling and performing, meeting all these famous people, George Bush, Bill Clinton, Kanye West, um,
Mm.
Stevie Wonder, Tina Turner, all kinds of different people that we performed with in that world, as well as in the classical world, like Seiji Ozawa, who's a very big Japanese conductor.
Oh
And we
yeah.
performed with like the Thousand Voice Choir. It was a lot of people on the stage. And so that was a huge experience for me as a young boy, not, really knowing. And so that really solidified my love of music. And then also seeing the world, we
Yeah.
went everywhere. So you can see there's so many options. There's more than just Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan.
Yeah.
And so then that it just kind of branched out to Morehouse and then to opera and then to living in Europe for the last 10 years.
I love that, man, because it feels like just like following you and everything. It feels like you have always traveled performing, and it's really cool for me to see because I have people say to me all the time, no one ever really knows where I am at any point in
Exactly.
time.
They were just like, they said, Edwin, what country are you in now? I was like, don't come for me. Don't.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. So okay, living in the UK for the last 10 years, where have you spent the most time? Just I'm personally curious, like where were you located? I know you were in Germany for a bit, and I know you've done stuff in the UK, but what did that time span look like as far as where you were living?
Basically 2012 until the pandemic.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and I lived in Austria first, in Vienna, and I was a music teacher there, and then I kind of got back into singing.
Mm,
Um, when that was done, that was only about 6 months. Then I moved to Hamburg, and I lived in a small place called Lüneburg, a city right outside of Hamburg. And I stayed basically between Lüneburg and Hamburg for 3 years.
mm,
And then after that, the tennis came in, and that took me from the Netherlands down to Italy. And then when I finished with that, I decided, yeah, I'm done with y'all. I want something else. I need something else. I wanted some more passion, so I moved to Rome. I lived in Italy
mm.
for a while, and I lived
I
in
mean,
this
that's
big
passion for you.
Oh, and they're crazy. I live with a bunch of people from Naples, and so they barely speak Italian. They will cuss me out if they hear me say this. They speak their own version of Italian. I was just like, I didn't learn that. But I lived with them for the entire summer. I can speak Italian, so I was
Mm,
with them, and it was like being in La Boheme or Rent, because there was a
mm.
guy who was a cook, there was a guy who played the guitar, there was a girl who was a painter, I was a singer, there was a dancer, and then there was an old man who always offended everybody inside the house. So we uh, always had a really good time in there, and it did exactly what I needed. I needed to go there and find that kind of sense of passion again. When
Mm.
that was done, and when the money was done, I moved back to Germany and I lived in Berlin basically for the rest of my time in Germany. But I was always traveling with different ensembles or doing operas. And then 2019, well, it kind of started at the end of 2018 into 2019, and then all of 2019, I was in the UK.
Okay.
And I did consecutive shows, Porgy and Bess, Tremonisha, a new work. Yeah, so that was basically my whole time there. I miss it because I felt like it was like my formative years.
Yeah.
That time like right out of college, and it's just as important as growing up. Like
Oh,
it's like there's
absolutely.
and so
Absolutely.
that was interesting time. And so coming back to New York at the end of 2019, right before the pandemic happened, was basically by chance. My last gig finished, and the agents that I was working with said, "There's an audition we want to go to New York to do." I went to New York, and then after a week, one audition led to touring with American Spiritual Ensemble. I went to Nebraska and up and down the East Coast from the South to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to Rochester, New York. Um, and then finished the last day of tour was March 11th, and then boom, pandemic. So it was
Man.
literally like,
So it at least had a clean close to that run, at least,
yes,
if
yes,
nothing else. If nothing else.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
right. Those formative years, I mean, like it's a huge part of the evolution. It's like you wrap up where you are in college and that whole education process, and
yeah,
then they leave you like like a mushy ball
yeah,
full of information, and it's like,
yeah,
what are you going to start to shape that mush ball into? Like people, I think there's this misconception sometimes that college will turn you into who you're supposed to be. But I
yeah,
think it's more that in some ways, depending on where you go and what you're studying, they give you the
yeah,
tools so that you can
yeah,
turn yourself into what it is that you
exactly.
want to be after the fact.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that time right after that is, I mean, it's everything. It's everything.
it is.
Because I was
It
real
is.
snobby about a lot of things, and life kicked me around just a little bit early on. But I learned a few lessons the hard way, and then I learned as much and more than I had ever learned in school in some of those years following.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah,
it started with, I'm only going to do this. I'm only going to do this type of work. I'm only going to do that. And it
yeah.
just doesn't always work that way.
No, no,
you know?
all at all. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I don't. Uh, plans are good, or
Hmm.
ideas and goals are good, but I kind of just go with the flow and then see what happens and then adjust. I say
Absolutely.
would be the best way to look at it.
Yeah. So obviously you touched a little bit on this whole pandemic scenario, which is it was a big part of the reasoning why I wanted to start doing this whole podcast in the first place, and partially to keep myself motivated and
Yeah,
you know to kind of help keep some other folks motivated who might be out there listening and don't really know what to do with their time and all this kind of stuff. And
yeah,
so, for artists as well as people who aren't necessarily creatives, who are just like, how do I get from today to next week? It's like, I know to get from today to tomorrow, I just need to go to sleep and wake up. And God willing, I wake up and here I am. But how do I get from today to next week and this week to the next month without just stopping and giving up everything altogether?
yeah.
So, what kind of things do you do just in general to stay motivated, to stay inspired, and, creatively active during these kind of slow periods that happen regardless of the pandemic stuff?
Yeah. Well, the pandemic didn't like really throw me so much because the time in Europe was also very much so like that because there was a lot of changes. It's always there was always a change. And there was
Mm.
always something that I had to kind of readjust to, readjust my thinking, readjust how I thought things were going. And so I think it was just I always kind of tend to fall into the right place at the right time.
Mm.
And so right after the American Spiritual Ensemble thing, and then it just ended, and it was just like, okay, so I'm not going to Europe. Well, what the hell do I do now? I was like, I'm a New Yorker, but I don't feel like a New Yorker. I was like, I don't know anybody here. Um, but fortunately, lots of different interesting gigs came up, different ways. Like there was a company that I worked with, and they in London, and she was doing a project, and she asked me to sing an aria, so I did that. There was a guy who I did a Porgy and Bess with, and he's Japanese, and he was trying to inspire Japanese art actors. And the last role I did, I did a lot of acting, and so I did like a little short tutorial about acting, or about using your space. You know, this room has, I've changed this room so many different times for everything. For the video, I changed this. For the opera that's coming out soon, changed it, everything. And so it's just like, okay, I may not have all these other things, but what do I have? And how can I reimagine it? What can I do? What can I change? What can I adjust? And it takes being quiet with yourself, taking some time to just look, reevaluate, and then, you know, make some adjustments. Also, I did a really cool concert of spirituals with a guy from Morehouse as well, Courtney Carey. Courtney Carey's Stars of Tomorrow, and he included me in this project. It was beautiful, and it was streamed on this classical music platform called Idagio, in connection with Thomas Hampson. I was like, oh, Thomas Hampson, this is a big deal. And so that happened, and then and I'll answer your question more specifically. Also doing this with you, as well as right now I'm in the finishing part of an opera, Johnny Skiki, that I'm doing with a company that I did 2 shows before, and it's a virtual performance. So you got to make it all dramatic.
Yeah.
All that kind of craziness.
All that face. Give him face. Give him lots of face.
Give him face. Oh, amazing. But the other thing is, I think what happens is I get inspired from a lot of things, from television, from outside, from a nice day, from just everything can be a source of inspiration when you take the time to look for it. And so I've always loved, I would say always loved, I've always had other ideas in my mind along what I was doing. And so I spent a lot of time, like I bought a green screen kit. I learned how to shoot and do all that kind of stuff. I got all these lights and cameras and stuff. And I'm always trying to, you know, figure out how to bring what I have in my mind, or the ideas that how I view myself as an artist, to the screen, until somebody else hires me to do that. So,
right.
You know, and so I spent a lot of time figuring out. I tried to do cinema 4D. That was a bit of I won't say a bad word. That was challenging for my mind. It was really, really technical, and so I learned how to create all these different 3D objects. But I'm gonna let someone who knows how to do that well. But at least I have an understanding of that. And so basically, the point is that I spent time trying to develop some of the other skills that I have, that enhance what it is I already do, or what I like to do. And I also love languages, so I have some friends in shows, so I watch my German soap opera every day.
I like that.
I speak some Russian as well, and so I have a bunch of Russian shows that I'm watching. Serials.
Привет, как дела? Хорошо.
Да, конечно, хорошо. Yeah, and so just kind of staying involved in the things that make me happy, or that keep me inspired. I think that's the best way to answer that question.
I love that. That's a great answer, and it's, I mean, that's the way to do it. This idea of what do I have and how can I reimagine it? I mean, that is so much of everything. That and the evolution. It's like, all right, I'm still here. Like, I'm still here. What can I do? You know, if this has been taken away and that's been taken away, what do I have and what can I do with that? You know, there's generally something, and, you know, reinforcing skills you already have or learning new skills. I mean, that's great, because you can still apply those things to what you're doing. So, okay, last question for you. May seem kind of weird, maybe not. Do you fly in your dreams? And if so, how does it happen?
Yes. Yes. I haven't in a while, but yes.
Mm,
Um, I definitely have these dreams where I'm walking
mm.
and then I see like the top of a building and I'm just like, yeah, I want to get up there. And then I would just like literally put my arms out and start flapping and then I was, oh shit, I'm getting off the floor.
Oh, you
And,
flap.
and yeah, flap. And then eventually, like once I kind of get the momentum, I'm just gliding. I haven't done it in a long time, but I definitely had lots of dreams where I'll just be gliding, flying, and stuff like that. I love those dreams. I wake up trying to do the same thing or break my ankle or something. But you know, I definitely do that. Definitely do that.
That's cool. So yeah, that's the first time I heard somebody say flapping. I like that. I like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, what I'm gonna do with these arms? They're here. I might as well do something. You know.
So
So
okay, where can people find you online? You have a personal website. I'm gonna include your Instagram and YouTube channel and all that. But do you have a personal website?
mostly on Facebook is where a lot of my updates of what's going on are there. Until I need to update the website and all that kind of stuff, but it's there.
Okay, okay, cool. I'll include all of that good stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the last question for now. Let's go ahead and
Okay.
play some music. And yeah, let's chat it up a little bit
Okay.
off camera.
Now you say you're lonely. You cry the long night through. Well, you can cry me a river, cry me a river. I cried a river over you. Now you say you're sorry for being so untrue. Well, you can cry me a river, cry me a river. I cried a river over you. You drove me, nearly drove me out of my head, while you never shed a tear. Remember, I remember all that you said. You told me love was too plebeian, told me you were through with me, and now you say you love me. Well, just to prove you do, come on and cry me a river, cry me a river. I cried a river over you. pulled me out of my head, while you never shed a tear.
I remember all that you said, told me love was too plebeian, told me you were through with me. I know you say you love me. Well, just to prove you do. Come on and cry me a river, cry me a river. I cried a river over you.
Oh, I'll cry
over
you.
I cried a river over you.
Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with us today. If you want to hear more stories like these, make sure to hit the subscribe and notification bells to stay in the loop. And make sure to check out Edwin at cottone25.wixsite.com/EJC-tenor. cottone25.wixsite.com/EJC-tenor. Can't believe I just did that in one breath. Technically, that was several breaths.